All right, so this head will be familiar to you guys. This is one that I've been working on a bunch lately. Had a lot of work done to it. So this is a 1981 Escort head. So this is North American, so it's going to be a 1981 1.6. It's going to be the base model, carbureted version. Yeah, the lower compression one. But that has nothing to do with that. This head, changing the heads doesn't change your compression. It's just that the E1s have smaller intake ports than some of the other ones. But this one actually happens to have the same exact intake diameter as the what we call the 1.6 high output intake manifolds, the carbureted ones. So that's why I left the inlets of the ports alone. But where I focused most of my time was in the bowl. And that's, in the bowl of each of these ports. You can tell I did some work, not loads. I didn't do a crap ton because the inlet diameter is a restriction, so it's no need to go crazy here because this is still larger in diameter or area or volume than this is. So it doesn't make sense to go crazy here, but what we're after is flow, not volume. So that's why I did what we did. But if we look here at a untouched port, you can see that from the factory, this one in particular was actually given a decent bowl shape, a decent bowl cut. But you can still see that there is some casting there, and when we put the camera overhead like this, you can see that the bowl cut isn't quite perfect right in here against the long turn. And then the casting around the valve guide is a little straight, but I believe that would be perfectly fine. So I just kind of left those be. The other place where I put a lot of attention was where the port meets the seat. Because in a lot of these, where the port meets the seat can be a real funny thing. But these actually weren't too bad. You can see the seat is a little larger in diameter than the port. So we took that and we fixed it, smoothed it out. So now the intake seats and ports have a very smooth transition between them. So they should flow quite well. Also spend a little time on the short turn. Not that it makes a huge bit of difference, but see this one here, the bowl cut kind of makes for a sharp turn right there. So we go and we smooth that out. It's just those couple little things that will make a difference. But otherwise, that's kind of all we had to do on the intake side. On the exhaust side, it was all just the same stuff as the intake. We smoothed the transition between the seat and the ports, the port wall, but even still, you can see that this just has a really weird port casting. There's kind of a shelf here. You can see that the part of the port wall that I sanded. It's that shiny aluminum right below the steel valve seat. So that's a band of aluminum. But below that is where I haven't sanded because it's quite recessed, and it's recessed quite a bit. And that is the bowl, or the long turn bowl of the exhaust ports. And I'm not interested in trying to blend that out. This is just way too big in diameter for what we need. So we're just going to leave it the way it is. And what's nice is over time, carbon will accumulate within here. This will fill up with carbon, and it'll actually make that long turn nice again without me having to, add metal. That would be ideal, but we're just not going to do that because it's a little too funky in the tight, cramped space for it. So it's more than I can handle. It's more than a lot of shops are going to be interested in, and it might be negligible improvements. But like I said, over time, as that fills with carbon, this will smooth out as nice as the intake long turn does. Another thing we did is we went and we sanded or ground that part of the casting that follows the spark plug hole. That's what that's for. See, the untouched ones stick out a bunch, and they're not the prettiest of shapes. part of the bowl cut digs into it here, and then it leaves a sharp peak, and it sticks out pretty far into the port. So I ground those down a bunch. I could have made it perfectly around all the way through this exhaust port. However, there's already enough volume in this diameter for the exhaust, especially compared to the intake. So there's no need for me in this particular engine to open that up completely. We're just going to leave that the way it is. On other ones, I might open them up more, especially if the intake is opened up like some of my other engines. But otherwise, typical CVH rules, you don't want to touch the short turn of the exhaust. It's not worth it. But the long turn is where it counts. So pretty much all I could do with the exhaust was just blend the seat with the port wall best I could, because you can see there's an overhang from this section of the port wall to the rest of the port wall, and there's an overhang from the seat to the actual port wall. You can see that in this one here. See, there's a shadow here casted by the valve seat, and then there's a shadow here casted by the weird port casting. So it's just weird stuff. Otherwise, on the exhaust outlet side, you didn't do much, but here you can kind of see that weird port casting discrepancy I talked about, and it's present in all the other ones. It's not just that one, it's all these. They're really funny like that. So, you know, like I said, over time they will accumulate with carbon and things will get better performance-wise, slowly. But you know, the benefits might be marginal. Otherwise, I left these completely alone. And what I will do is I'm going to go in there and polish the inside of the exhaust ports, or at least most of it, because like I said, we kind of want carbon to accumulate here, but we don't want it to accumulate in the rest of this port. So we're going to spend some time and polish the inside of that like I've done some of my other heads, and then we'll be good to go. Oh, I had also polished the combustion chambers, well, at least these two so far. This whole half of the head is completely untouched, but just so you can see the difference. And it's kind of hard to pick up on camera, but when the machine shop got a hold of these, they had bead blasted these with something kind of aggressive. So it left a kind of coarse texture to these. You can see this one has its original milling marks here, but otherwise the rest of them have just been kind of bead blasted away. So what we did is that, so this is what the stock one looks like after they had bead blasted or whatever. We'll go back over here. This one's a little smoother. You can see it reflects light a little bit better versus this one, not so great. But the biggest difference is in the feel. Yeah, this one sounds like sandpaper. This one less. You can hear the difference. So that'll help things out. In theory, you kind of want this texture to help keep fuel from forming droplets sticking onto the combustion chamber. However, we try to keep these guys polished because the smoother the surface, the less carbon will accumulate onto here, and that'll help with things like pinging and hot spots, which also causes pinging and preignition, detonation, a number of things that you don't really want, especially once you get some miles on these engines. So that kind of covers everything I've done to this guy.